Hello and welcome. And today we have got a seriously interesting guest. And I've been following this guy since 2020 when I first heard about the prophet Nostradamus in around early 1990. And lots of things have happened, lots of things have been predicted, and there's all sorts of interesting ways that everything seems to be coming ahead in this year. So, what better than to discuss lots of things which we think could seriously happen this year than one of the guys who's probably one of the world's leading scholars into the wonderful world of Nostradamus. Believe it or not, it's entirely up to you. You're free to believe whatever you want to believe. But I think in the prepping community, it's very good to try and cover as many angles as we can to help us prepare in any way we feel we need to. So, without further ado, I'm going to bring on our guest. His name is John Hogue, and welcome to you, John. How are you, sir?
Well, I'm fine. Thanks for having me on, and thanks for doing that little excerpt that I did on Paul Cottrell's show. That was well
Sure.
done, and
Oh, cool.
yeah.
But yeah, it's as I said, it's been a long time coming, and I've always wanted to chat with you, especially on YouTube. And we're going to do some private member stuff as well, because there are certain things that we can and can't say. I'm sure we all are aware of what we can and can't say on YouTube land. I mean, even like we were saying off air earlier, Nostradamus back in the day, he had to be really careful of what he said. And here we are. History repeats, doesn't it, John? Really?
It exactly. I mean, I when it was really bad, I was doing all kinds of things, and I said, "This how ironic." People never change. That's predictability is the fuel of prophecy. We keep repeating the past and calling it the future. We put on different outfits, different religions, different politics, different weapons, but it's really just the same wheel of samsara running around in circles. And and I mean, it was that very pattern of things as a child. I was very young when I got my first real shock into the world of prophecy, when I had my first premonition in the final days before my 7th birthday. That ended up being the Cuban Missile Crisis,
Wow.
which ended on my birthday. and and if it had not gone, well, my birthday would have been the start of World War III. So it really impacted me as a child and made me, in my early age, of wanting to know about the news, wanting to know what was going on in the world. And so I've been a news junkie since I was 7. And it's been a fascination with history that has led me to look at it like a doctor looks at a pathology. It's like, why is it that people keep repeating themselves? What is that about? And then, of course, as I got more into mysteries and became more existential, I started studying all the scriptures, and scriptures can be kind of a future history of prophecy, and same things are going on. So I just thought, wow, it is very strange and a fascinating pathology to study, for the hope that we can actually educate ourselves not to break from that pattern. Because I would contend that what people call the future is really false. It is a regurgitated past. And that if one really lives, see, my main path in life is as a meditator, or better, the practitioner of dhyana, which is Sanskrit that Buddha called jhana, and Bodhidharma in China called it chuan. And then finally, it went to Japan as Zen. And Zen is not Zen Buddhism. Zen is beyond Buddhism. It is an evolution beyond Buddhism. That's what my teacher, Osho, Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh, taught me. And I've been with him with that since 1980 in India. I was on the Oregon Commune, the infamous Oregon Commune. I have a very different tale to tell about that, and
I'll bet, yeah.
on some other show.
Yeah.
The wild, wild country. I know all those people. I think I'm singing in the back with the band. It's one of those shots. So with my red cowboy hat and a much shorter beard. And, I was in my 20s. So, I try to bring into my work the eternity of the present. In fact, I'm quite anti-prophetic. I'm as anti-prophetic as an authentic Tantra master is anti-sex. The way to transcend sex from which is the beginning to super consciousness, is to accept it, celebrate it, understand it, move through it. But as much back in the old times of Tantra as it is today, people in the name of Tantra really, most of them, just as my master would say, they only want an orgy. They are not wanting super consciousness. So, orgy is fine, but you have to, if you want to bring your ecstasy up through your entire chakras and out and all over the world, that you have to keep moving on deeper and deeper. But anyway, so with those, I'm kind of giving an overview because this is my first time on your show. Hopefully there will be many more, and just kind of introduce what this weird furry fellow is all about. And so I try to use, like sex is used by a tantrika, I use the future. People all have an interesting, this is the threshold of coming back to the present.
Right.
So, and if you're in the present, then a lot of things change. If you can live in this moment, there are many secrets of the universe that are just waiting for you effortlessly to see and to experience. And one of them is that the future is being projected upon by the past. That's what the ego does. But the way it really happens is if you're in the present is, the future is coming to each moment, like an energy of spontaneous genius and love. It has a very different quality. And one of the reasons why a lot of dated predictions seem to trail off in the 21st century, and then they're really far removed. This is the hardest thing to do in prophecy, is to actually predict in the year 1944 on this month, this is going to happen. Very hard for a lot of unconscious things to come together to make that happen. Is exceedingly hard. So, but the people who do that, like Nostradamus, Edgar Cayce, and a few others, Cairo, who's a British prophet, and also the famous palmist fellow. He was kind of a James Bond of the Victorian era, by the way. Count Louis Hamon was his name. These things, they just, I lost my thread. Anyway, I'll keep going another time.
Yeah, I know exactly. Do you know what? I get that all of the time. But when I spoke to a few friends that I was going to be having you on the show, they said to me, ask him about what he really thinks about 2024. Because do you know what, John? There's so much talk bubbling under the surface, and it's almost sort of overtaken by a feeling that there are going to be lots of changes this year. So during your research and looking into the writings of Nostradamus, have you got those feelings, and have you read about certain things which you believe could be happening this year, which is going to be way past the mundane of what we're used to?
Yes, I planned a special for my Hogue Prophecy report, and there's so much going on in January that I had to delay its release later this month. So I'm going to base it on the Chinese year of I think it's the Iron Dragon, from February 11th to January 29th next year. And that's the year I'm looking at in the Chinese calendar, because I missed the Gregorian. So this is, simply put, a year of reckoning. There's never been a year before like this year. We are as a human race, We are in uncharted temporal waters and potentials. Masks will be coming off. Systems that have lasted for 500 years will begin to rapidly decline. The great unipolar hegemon is going to, by the end of February, perhaps do something that will speed up the collapse of the American hegemonic era, which is about 33 years. But more than that, we are now in the 6th of 7 passes over Pluto by the planet Pluto, who rules eras, epochs. We are passing over it, and its natal position that happened on October 10th last year. And weirdly enough, exactly 365 days later, it finishes the pass by not an exactitude conjunction, but a 2-degree orb, which is still very close. But this is its movement out of Pluto, which is the architect of democracy. One Pluto orbit ago, when America was created, it was the beginning of the theory was then put into Aquarius, into revolutionary practice. All the founding fathers of the United States, and July 4th, 1776, made their Declaration of Independence when Pluto's 27 degrees Capricorn. And they laid out in a classic Capricornian way the architecture of an established new democratic dream concept. And then shortly after that, Pluto left very rapidly at that time and went into Aquarius, which is where things are enacted, where there's revolution. And most of the American Revolution was fought to win that dream. And then later the creation of the US Constitution and the ratification of the Republic were all the revolutionary moves, actions that built the house of democracy rather than just had it on a blueprint called the Constitution or the Bill of Rights. So that then means that we are now heading to the Advent window revolution that really spread revolution all over the world after it was incubated in the United States. That's the French Revolution, and which ironically, by a tyrant, Napoleon, ended up spreading. They had to beat Napoleon. They had to follow a lot of the tenets of the French Revolution and how to fight wars and stuff that were basically rooted in that, and that spread the revolutions all over Europe for several times. And so a century of revolution happened after that. We are repeating that return in our times. We are repeating it from the revolution of the United States, French revolutions. Pluto return comes in the mid-2030s. But from this time on with this year, that's what's another significant thing about it, is we're going to see rebellion, revolutions, people questioning the status quo. The globalist mindset for decades now, I've been predicting that there would be a return of fascism that would be corporate and of the high elites, and they would try to control the whole world using a Piscean age concept of humanitarianism set on its ear and turning it into in this burgeoning Aquarian age, turned it into some Piscean perversion, a global police state with a smile, with a lot of thought police running around. I was writing about this in 1990 in India, that there would be police states with a smile, cancel culture, all this stuff happening. But it is a passing phase. It cannot sustain itself because the Aquarian age we're in the twilight between the two great 2,000-year ages. And it started around the time of the Enlightenment in the 1770s, where people started to think about equality and the pursuit of happiness, things that we take for granted. We're absolutely bonkers kinds of ideas for people to think about back then, about being happy. What's that? Now it's moving into the next phase of sovereignty, where it's not enough that all men are created equal. Now it's all of us are created equal, but that's a baby step. The next step is all people are equally unique. The only thing that you and I have equally is our uniqueness. We share that. And this is a much more an Aquarian age idea. In a similar way, even though it's also really in its baby steps, this ability, this attempt that we're trying to make of turning a new form of wealth out of mathematics, to make mathematics an object of wealth because of certain computations that create a thing called Bitcoin that is rare because you can only have so many computations turning this mathematical unit of value into it. By the 2140, it'll run out. So the concept, which the Piscean age was about centralizing everything, central grids, centralized religions, make nation states, now make them super states like the European Union, central, and then you end up with Klaus Schwab trying to play Dr. Evil, making everybody into one centralized global world. I used to think that might be the way it would go, but the way the European Union is coming apart and will, I think, possibly not be around at the end of this year. Equally, NATO may not be around at the end of this year, or at least the mortal wounds that will see them collapse will be clearly seen in this year. And then the result might be in 2025, 2026. But these times are unique, and they are part of what I've been warning a long time ago about, yet decades ago, that the 2020s would be the roaring 2020s. Lots of change, lots of upheaval, a greater and greatest depression coming, starting in this year. But it's a depression that's not going to hit the whole world. It's only going to hit the people who hold on to the collective Western unipolar illusion of control. What is also happening is a huge axis shift of the world away from the West to the BRICS nations, away from a rules-based world order. Of course, they never say what the rules are. It's what we make up and what you must obey. And we can keep you down by weaponizing our US dollar until last year, when the Saudi Arabians decided, you know what, we're going to start buying in digital yuan. And we're not going to sell our oil with the US dollar as its commodity and by buying US bonds. When that happened in October of last year, or I think it was earlier, but anyway, when that happened, that was the beginning of the end of the US dollar as the global currency. It is the end of the Bretton Woods journey that made the grave mistake of creating not a currency that was a place for other currencies to be transformed, that no nation controlled. That's what the BRICS people have learned. They've learned their lessons from Bretton Woods. They're not going to do what they did there and make the US dollar the reserve currency. Now, if you do that, then that means that you're going to get a world that's completely dominated by one currency, one nation. And it will usually, because power ultimately corrupts. Actually, that's wrong. Power actually exposes. My teacher Osho used to say, power does not corrupt. Power shines a light on the corruption of ego that if you didn't have power, you'd never know it was there in you. For instance, what if the little mustachioed man, from the Second World War, had achieved his dream to be an artist? He would have never taken that creativity in the direction that power gave him to do, which ended up with the deaths of 60 million people in the Second World War. The corruption was there. It is there in all of us. It is there as the very habits and programs of ego that are put upon this mystery that gets born, this innocent genius, which is an awakened being incarnate, but taken for granted, this very ordinary state of enlightenment. So what happens is an ordinary enlightened being comes into the world, and then the conditioning of that being is to make it extraordinary, and that is ego. We come in as the cosmos, we end up as ego idiots. Idios in Greek means you're under the illusion of being separate from the whole cosmos. And so we all are trained to live in various degrees of idiocy. And that's what makes us suffer and fight. And it's like waves may fight with each other because they're identified with their shapes. And they've forgotten what's inside, which is exactly the same salty ocean. So why fight? You're fighting yourself, just in a different form. So that's why, the real movement to peace is not to fight war. In fact, I find peaceniks more violent than people who fight wars. It's this action-reaction duality that makes things a mess. So we don't have to do that. We can, but we can't actually do anything about it either. We just have to understand it. In the understanding of these things, they fall away. And the thing that was lost, the awakened one pretending not to be awakened, but instead an idiotic ego, what watches that, what becomes alive again, that watches that pretense, that pretending, the habits, the ego, is the lost Buddha, the lost awakened one. What else can witness it but our own consciousness? So these are very important things that you'll rarely hear, because they're kind of shocking to the whole ego concept. For instance, we are seeing such darkness descending on the world now that hasn't happened before. And a lot of people are wondering, well, why? Why is that? And I said, well, it has its purpose in the great play of the cosmos. For instance, coal doesn't know, let's say unconsciousness is like coal, black as unconscious as possible, and it's heavy and it's pressuring on us more and more and more. But that's the only way coal becomes diamonds. The other thing too is that darkness, unconsciousness, my teacher used to say, there's one virtue and one sin. The only virtue is being aware. The only sin is to be unconscious, to live like a robot, to live like an ego, to have forgotten what gift of mystery you gave. Every baby is a Buddha, and every baby's turned into an ego. And very few become fully their Buddha nature, their enlightenment. And that's why there's only a handful. But there's also another alchemy going on here, that unconsciousness is a power of quantity. You can see it with mobs. You can see it in a football match that goes into a riot, and people are suddenly just fighting, and they seem to be carried off by the mob, because the mob is a unit of unconsciousness, the most powerful unit. So if the whole people become a mob mentality, they can carry off individuals into its fever. And then afterwards they'll say, why did I do that? I mean, there was this story when my teacher was,
isn't it?
Yeah, well, Osho related a story where he was watching in Jabalpur a major riot going on between Muslims and Hindus down on the street. And he saw this very holy kind of guy that he really liked. And he's trying to say, stop, everybody, let's be in peace. Don't do this. And then at one point, it just got so crazy. Everybody was taking something. So he saw a big clock and he took it and ran off with them. So later my teacher said, what were you doing? I really don't know. I was, saying, don't do this, let's be in peace. And then people were picking stuff up, and then I picked up something and I'm running with it. And I was like, what am I doing? And
It's
that,
something
I
to
mean,
do with
that's how
energy,
we
isn't it?
go to war. Look at
Exactly. Yeah.
Look at
I mean, look at
1914. Everybody was a big party because they
mm,
hadn't had war for 40 years, and no one had yet had a industrial war. There were hints of what it could do, and people ignored those hints. You know, even Marshal Pétain, who became infamous later as the head of Vichy, uh, before World War One, he was a prophet. He was telling everybody, "Look, it's not going to be about the bayonet. It's going to be about gunfire. It's going to be about firepower." And when we were running around our pretty little uniforms, our Lancers and all of that in the first month of August 1914, he said, "We're all going to be digging in like trolls, you know, and we're all going to be digging fortifications because you can't stand, you know, you have guns. It took four shots a minute for a Napoleon 12-pounder to
mm,
fire. Now these howitzers the French and the Germans had in 1914 were firing 30 shots. I mean, a minute, sorry,
French
for a minute,
warfare. Yeah.
30 shots a minute. So firepower. And he was right. Well, we're in a 1914 kind of moment now
Yeah.
where we're seeing in this war in Ukraine and in other places that drones have redefined what warfare is in ways as shocking and stopping people in their tracks of tradition, as happened with the Maxim machine gun that could mow down an entire Vietnamese French colonial regiment. You know, one Maxim took down 1,800 of them across the fields in the Battle of the Frontiers in August, September 1914. So you know, things are new weapons, gas, all that. We're in that kind of a situation now where we've had this very long hiatus from world wars, and now we're in the Third World War. It's conventional so far.
Yeah.
The Second Cold War started in 2014, kind of the 100-year anniversary, with the Maidan coup backed by the United States, that overthrew the last democratically elected president of Ukraine. All the other presidents since have been in a government formed by the provisional government, which was a who's who of Banderite Nazis. So, you know, the last time Europe, a major European country, whenever European country, I mean, people can always say, "Oh, Mr. Hogue, there's Nazis in Russia, there's Nazis in America, and Nazis are all over the place." Yes, that's true, but only twice have Nazis taken power in Europe: fascist Italy, Nazi Germany, and now again, Ukraine.
That's a wrap, guys. John's got stuff to do, and I've got stuff to do. But stay
I've got
tuned
a world to save.
for more awesome podcasts as we go forward into time with all of this crazy 2024 stuff. So
Yep.
it's been great, John. It's really been a first.
Thank you, Darren. It's
No
been a
problem.
blast. A
It
blast.
sure has. Yeah, let's smash it. Let's just keep rolling and doing what we feel we need to do. That's cool.
Yeah, that's it.
Right.
Keep smacking.
Take care. Stay funky.